Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we have a different type of show for you tonight. For one thing, we're going to be discussing the Exeter UFO incident that happened September 3rd, 1965. We're going to go into that a bit. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about the event that's coming up this weekend in Exeter. They have their yearly UFO festival. I'm going to be one of the speakers there. Peter Robbins MCs that. He's been involved in that for years. He's also going to be with us tonight and talking about that. I also have UFO Jack who helps me out. He lives local here and actually in Exeter, New Hampshire, and he's going to be talking about a UFO sighting that he had. He did share that in one of my shows not that long ago, but I thought it was fitting to have him go over that again tonight. And so just a couple of things. This coming Thursday at 8 p.m., we have Gene and Natalia Stiko, and they're going to be talking about Soviet documents that were found in her father's estate, basically. These documents, and a lot of them appear to be like a UFO, possibly reverse engineering type of things, all in Russian. It's very, very interesting. So check that out Thursday night. This is our first show on the time slot that is 9 p.m. That I have switched the Tuesday shows. So the Thursday stay at 8 p.m. This show is now at 9 p.m. I was supposed to do that next week. However, I had a conflict today. So it was either run a rerun or switch to the 9 p.m. slot, which I did. And I do apologize for those people that cannot make this time slot. You've been with me so long. I hope that most of you can make this new time slot. And I hope it's convenient for a lot of people. There was a number of reasons I did that. If you would ask me the reason why I did it, I might as well say the live YouTube attendance has dropped considerably. And this slot is the prime slot for YouTube viewership. And so that's basically why I did switch. And I hope a lot of people can slide over and make this time slot work for them. And thank you all for being here tonight. And those of you in chat, so we'll be taking questions in chat. And so also next week, we have Mitch Randall, and he is going to be talking about, that's at also the 9 o'clock time on Tuesday. He's going to be talking about UFO detection, radar system. Basically, it's an affordable system that can be spread out all over the United States and worldwide, possibly. Affordable, something that people can kind of grassroots type of thing for UFO detection. And that should be interesting. And then the following Thursday, we have Paige. She's going to be talking about, well, things like, for instance, the first mutilation of any animal was Snippy the horse. I don't know if anyone's looked into that, but that goes way back. We're going to be talking about that. The Colorado ranch where she grew up, the things, high strangeness, UFOs, all that. So that's next week with Paige. And so right now I'm going to bring in our guests. We have Peter Robbins. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, Martin. Long time no see.
Yeah, that's right. Just last night. And we have UFO Jack. So it's the first time you two have met. And of course, Jack will be there this weekend. Jack lives right in Exeter, New Hampshire. And so, Peter, since you were running late, you're very busy with this whole thing coming up, and we didn't have much time to talk. I mean, this is the time we're talking about the show right now, live on air. So I'd like to go over first of all, just do a little history on what happened. But first of all, I'd like Jack, I hope you don't mind. I'm putting you right on the spot right now. Jack lives in Exeter, and the only reason Jack is here tonight, and he helps me with my YouTube channel, does a wonderful job. But the reason Jack is here tonight and even paying attention to this topic is because of something that happened. Was it 2 years ago, Jack? A year and a half ago?
Yeah, back in 2022, October 2022. Yeah.
So you got the floor, Jack. We want to hear what happened in downtown Exeter.
Yeah, sure. So I got pretty deep into this topic after I had my own personal sighting. It was probably about like 200 feet away from me once it was all said and done, probably about 4 to 5 minute encounter. back in October of 2022 down in Exeter, New Hampshire. I was just getting, my local junk food for the night at the local pizza shop in town. And I'm standing outside of the pizza shop with my pizza box in one hand and my car keys in the other, getting ready to go home. And I look up at the tree line and there's this glowing red, like orb or light, red and white. And it's just bobbing along the tree line, probably from my left to right. And immediately I got like super excited. Like growing up as a kid, I was a sci-fi kid. And I thought, oh man, is this my genuine UFO moment? Is this like actually happening? I was like super excited. And I thought, if I go back inside the pizza shop and tell the pizza guys, hey, like there's a UFO outside, you got to go check this out. And in my mind at the time, I was thinking, I'm going to totally miss my moment here and it's going to be gone if I go tell them that it's here. And also I was kind of worried that they were going to think I was kind of like a kook or some kind of whack late on a Saturday night, like telling them there's a UFO outside. It's not typically your normal thing that you tell people that you don't know.
Especially late on a Saturday night.
Yeah. So I got in my car and I was like, I got to follow this thing because it blinked out for a little bit and then it reappeared further down the tree line. So I got in my car, probably followed it around 2 to 3 blocks down the road I found it over, it was hovering over this person's house, right in this like small residential area in Exeter. It's probably a town of like 17,000 people. So nothing really happens here. And it was pretty quiet. And I get out of my car. Again, I felt really uncomfortable that I was standing outside of this person's house at night alone, just like staring up above their roof at this glowing red light. And it was completely silent. There was no buzzing sound or like a rotor running or anything. It was probably the light itself was, I'd say for the most part, it was small. It was like half the size of your standard sedan, like a car, just floating there. And I'm standing there across the street and in the blink of an eye, it literally just like shut off like a light switch in a bedroom. And at the time, I hadn't done any research into UFOs. And in that moment, I literally thought it disappeared. I thought it vanished out of thin air. And it was darker than the night sky behind it. And I thought I was seeing spots in my vision because this thing was so bright. It was like looking up at the sun during the daytime. And you get, you always get spots in your vision. But so I just kind of, and it's really kind of a boring story at the end. I just go home and have dinner. And then I spent the past 3 months trying to look up what kind of like kid toy that could have been floating around in somebody's backyard over someone's house. And I couldn't find anything. And I was so excited in the moment. I didn't get my phone to take a picture or videotape it on camera. Yeah. I was just, I don't know. All I wanted to do in that moment was just look at this thing. It was like 4 minutes long, the whole encounter. It was a one-time thing. And ever since then, I can't forget about it. And I've been researching the topic ever since, looking for answers. And it's wound me all the way to here on Martin's wonderful show and the content that he produces. And it was just really fascinating. When you're so close to the phenomena, it really like rocks you to your core in the sense like, whoa, like this in your mind, you're thinking this doesn't belong here, yet it's there and you're looking at it and it's real. And then you realize like all the lies that have been going on once you start researching the topic and the disinformation and why it's such a secret. I have no idea why, but once you see it, like, it's real. You can't convince, and I'm not here to convince anybody that it's real or fake, but once you have your own sighting and it's close, within like proximity to you and it's within 200, 500 feet of you, like that's going to change the way you look at things. And it was pretty surreal, but that's the story in a nutshell. It was your classic, like red and white pulsating orb, which is pretty common in the UFO world. Yeah.
It's funny. Here it is. Exeter, New Hampshire, another red, red light, red orb, whatever.
Jack, listening to you give that account, which I appreciated, and I'll bet a lot of our other viewers, you're emblematic of so many of us that went through that door in one way or another, that had that, what I would call a BCAD experience,
Yeah.
an event that you measure forward and backward from in your life. Most of those in our lives are more conventional: weddings, funerals at the top of the list, that kind of thing. But
Right.
There's no other way to really describe it than the way you did. People can come into the subject, of course, through intellectual curiosity and be dedicated to for the rest of their lives and never see anything. Other people have more experiences than they would like. And then there are those of us that have an experience that, like it or not, helps to define our lives and often helps shape them.
Peter,
I also just
go
one more
Yeah.
thing. Your impulse to look first for like a kind of toy or a real world everyday solution rather than just, oh my God, I saw a flying saucer from, that's a very healthy impulse, and one that's crucial to any serious investigator.
Very good points. Peter, I remember talking to you the first time, I think it was 2011 or 12 or something like that. But I do remember you talking about your sighting. I know this is going to get off Exeter a little bit, but I'd like, there's a couple of reasons, like I'd like to hear your sighting again, but I believe I was almost going to talk to you, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago after I spoke to someone who had a sightings in Queens that sounded very much like yours in the 70s. So, yeah,
I'll be
I think it was 3 craft. They were silver, something like that. But
5, but it was
you had
an
5.
even
Okay.
number.
All right.
I'd be glad to give you a somewhat abbreviated version, but just to say first, 3-4 years ago, a good friend and close colleague, Richard M. Dolan, who had been fascinated by the story, especially with regard to my sister's experience, was staying over here for a couple of days, and we decided he just wanted to do a documentary on it. And you can find it on YouTube. It's called, I think, the UFO Abduction, the 1961 Abduction of Helen Robbins. And it covers a great deal of background material, more than a lot of interviews I've done. For me, it began on a perfectly beautiful early summer, late spring, mid-morning, when my sister and I were out in front of the house that we grew up in on Long Island, goofing around as kids do. But in a village, in a small town, there are those times where there's not only nothing going on around, your neighborhood, but there's nothing going on. There's no kids playing on the street. There's no cars going by. There's no ice cream truck or neighbors. It's just quiet. And I caught something out of my right peripheral vision and either said Helen or look, and coming at quite a rate of speed and then simply stopping like a freeze frame in a film were 5 silvery white elliptical objects, like holding a dinner plate, at distance, in a very precise V upside down formation. And they were close enough that there was no ambiguity. It wasn't a cloud in the sky. They were metallic, but not shiny. And each one of them had detailing around the edge that years later, when we first discussed this, because that memory was absolutely suppressed for me, and one that she never shared, although it remained in her consciousness, that we could only read like windows on a commercial airplane, at a distance. And I looked and looked and looked with the understanding I had zero interest in this subject. I had lots of other things going on as a 12-year-old. And I was about as sophisticated as the actor Jerry Mathers in the classic Leave It to Beaver television series. Very small town, happy growing up. I knew about flying saucers. What kid didn't? But only in the context of wonderful B movies I would see on Saturday afternoon with some of my friends at the local movie theater. I guess I intuited the adult message that yes, they're real in the movies, and it never occurred to me otherwise until there they were. And I went through, Martin, what I came to call a checklist reaction that I've documented. And I don't know how many people I've interviewed over the decades. You probably have too. You're minding your business, living your life, and you look up or what have you, and there it is, or there they are. And you go through a checklist in your mind of what these aren't. Not planes, kites, blimps, balloons, helicopters, reflections from the ground, model airplanes, strange-shaped clouds, flotsam and jetsam. What the am I looking at? And it was the first moment in my entire life as a kid where I realized I was looking at something that I knew didn't exist. And as a result, I was becoming more and more anxious. If this were true, and trying to tell myself, in fact, in regressive hypnosis, the poignant phrase that came up at the end, trying to hold on to something, was secret government test plane. There must be some kind of secret government test plane, but planes have wings, and planes have propellers or jet engines. They have tails. These were round. And there they were. At a certain point, I became so anxious that I literally turned on my heels and headed for the front door of the house to run in to tell her mom what was going on outside. And did just that, but never made it quite to the front door. I was knocked out, passed out. A series of circumstances happened that I went unconscious for a period of time. And when I came to, they were gone. My sister was gone, and I had a scrape on my arm right there because I came kind of skidding into the walkway from the front lawn kind of thing. And 14-year-old kid, back in the day, your first impulse, what a scab that is going to make. Red badge of courage, boys. We don't think like that quite anymore, but we did at that age. Go in the house, intuitively just head up the stairs. Both of my sisters shared a room at the top of the stairs.
Whoops.
I think we lost him.
Yeah, we lost him. He should come back. But yeah, I think he's. Let me see if I can get it back. Whoop. So
my camera goes off.
All right, we'll try. I'm not sure with.
I still look the same as I did moments ago.
I can
basically.
Yeah.
I saw her private moment, go downstairs, walk through the living room, dining room, and I'm speaking now from clear recall in hypnotic regressions with Bud Hopkins and a great New York City police detective, particularly trained in regressive hypnosis for criminal investigation, an early mentor of mine. And there's my mom in right profile at the stove, I think making grilled cheese sandwiches for us for lunch. And I said, quote unquote, Mom, Helen and I just saw some things in the sky over the Parker's house that look like flying saucers from the movies. Now, if you are a parent, or if you are a kid who ever had a sighting and told your parent, and their reaction was understandably to deal with their own anxiety and not want to trouble you, oh, honey, it just looked like that, or you thought, or not a good thing to say to a kid. And my mom turned and looked at me. Years later, when we talked about this, she didn't remember it, but her impulse was extraordinary. She simply looked at me and...
Oh, wow. We're having some trouble here. I'm not sure. There it is. You back, Peter?
Audio, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Was.
Not anymore.
Anyway, he just looked at me with a look that, well, like looking at an adult. She didn't feel the need to make me wrong or to rationalize. And then she went back to cooking with a serious look on her face. Parenthetically, for those that question aspects of regressive hypnosis, and I think it's really all a matter of who your practitioner is and what their intentions are, rather than the discipline itself. but either Bud or Pete at that point said, "Do you know what time it is?" And I said, "No." "Is there a clock in the room?" "Yes." "Where's the clock?" "On the wall, up to the right behind my mom." "Look at the clock." "Okay." "What time is it?" 20 after 12. Anyway, it troubled me tremendously, so much so that we didn't talk about it when Helen asked me later that afternoon if I wanted to. And well, people do it all the time with much more conventional and often much more tragic kind of trauma. They put it out of their mind. They are able to repress the memory. And I did.
And your sister did as well, I remember, right?
No, Helen actually remembered a tremendous amount of it, but even as a 12-year-old realized this is not a cool thing to talk about. And so had it just be part of her inner life, and was ready to speak with me about it when my memory came roaring back through a series of circumstances one afternoon, a little more than 14 years later. And I was overwhelmed when it did. My first thought was, I'm having some kind of mental aberration, because there's no way a rational person could have forgotten what I'm remembering now. It was the most amazing thing I ever saw in my life. And kind of crashed and burned on that for a while and pulled myself together, washed my face, had a cup of tea, and say, now what? And I knew the now what. It was call my sister, because I had a witness. And I did, asked her very specifically. It was a good time to talk. And thankfully, before blurting it out, had realized I could do that and she would say yes or no. But I would never really know the nuances. So I just said, remembered something. I need to know if you remembered. And I set the scene, talking about the weather, the time of day, the time of year, about how old we were. And she just cut me off mid-sentence and told me what I remembered, which was great, except she wasn't sure whether it was 5 or 6, which we worked out very quickly the next day when I had already done my first painting, and she saw it was obviously an odd number. And I think that episode in my life, had it been confined to that, would have been enough to make me one of those millions of people who had a lifelong interest in the subject, who, had other career goals and followed them, but stayed in touch, with what was happening, read the books, went to conferences. But then Helen said, either there's more and I don't know how you're going to feel about it, or words to that effect. This in 50 years ago, 1975, when there wasn't anything called UFO abduction research, when I didn't know anybody who was into this subject. I didn't know there were UFO conferences. I just knew this was crazy. But she described to me these perfect kind of bubbles of memory that I had never heard anything like in my entire life, but now I've heard countless times, often close to word for word. A memory of being walked through a curved metal hallway by a number of beings, and this being 15 years before the term gray emerged. And I asked her what they looked like, and her description was small doctors with big heads and big black eyes who talked to me in my head. There was one very tall one, and the next thing she knows, she's on the table, 12-year-old girl, naked, and just that thing that also accompanies experiencers' experiences of a very lackadaisical attitude when you should be freaking the hell out of, oh, isn't this interesting, essentially, which was how I felt for the few seconds before I went down. And it wasn't until in her head, hearing these classical things, you've seen us before, you'll see us again, or we've seen you before, we'll see you again, you're special, we love you, we will not harm you. When that we will not harm you came into her head, she was experiencing pain in the genital area from whatever they were doing. So she emerged from it, no fan of them. But I thought at that moment, my sister must be going crazy. I thought that for a matter of seconds before I caught myself saying, But 12 seconds ago, it was perfectly okay for 5 silvery white UFO objects to be hanging over the Parker's house across the street. Listen to what your sister's saying. And that not only altered the trajectory of my life, it effectively derailed the only career that I had pursued or wanted from the time I was a kid, and that I was really starting to do. And I resented that. I didn't go into the work for love of the work. I was obsessed. I needed to know what happened to my sister. And ultimately, that obsession really took over my life, and not in a good way. I ultimately was fortunate enough to find a therapist who was just the right person for me and who helped me normalize what I had experienced. He happened to also be the former first assistant for the last 11 years of in the life of Dr. Wilhelm Reich. And he had a sighting with Reich and then after the fact. And Dr. Baker helped me to become the person that I am, and I think deal with a great deal of the stress that comes your way doing this work professionally, especially when you get deeply involved in certain casework. And for me, especially back then, I was not only a novice, I didn't know this world that anybody now, just go on the internet and you're connected to a zillion people and authorities and personalities and documentaries and conferences. I was on my own and was not quick to make friends in the field. You're all crazy, right? But
yeah.
That's how I got rolling.
Wow. Yeah, I've forgotten a lot of that. And so thank you, Peter. So let's get back to Exeter. We have this conference coming up. I'm excited about it. I've gone a number of times over the years, and this. How many years has this been for them? Are you aware of that, Peter?
Well, I had thought it was the 10th anniversary, but it was going on for several years earlier, but under independent management, so to speak. And folks who were, like a lot of conference organizers, and why not, doing their best to run it as a business, and they weren't able to. And thankfully, the Exeter chapter of the Kiwanis International took it over. Without them, it would have died.
Oh,
and
wow.
They connected with a resident UFO scholar, Dean Merchant, a great guy and a remarkable personality, who really was the founder or co-founder. And I came in about 10 years ago, I think in the first wave of the Kiwanis organized events. And what impressed me the most, and there are conferences and festivals and they all have a somewhat different character, was that this one was not only nonprofit, but that all expenses, all money's made beyond your normal operating expenses, everything from renting the hall to, feeding us lunch 2 days to residences and transportation, that kind of thing. Everything went to local children's services in the greater Exeter area. And there's nothing going on in the world of, UFO conferences that's like that, or paranormal, as far as I know.
Right.
And every year we've done somewhat better. And last year, we cleared $35,000 that went right to them.
That's
something
wonderful
to be proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Peter, had you ever, I want to talk historically to people who are unfamiliar with, Norman having his UFO sighting back in 1965. Are you up on that? Or you want us to talk about, we didn't get a chance to speak ahead of the show. So
you are probably more knowledgeable off the cuff on that case than I am.
Yeah. I had heard about it. Now I'm talking about before I got into the UFO topic. I had heard about it, but I didn't know much about it. But anyway, basically in the nutshell, and Jack, you've looked a little bit into this too. Oh, there's Peter. Yeah. But, basically it was September 2nd, and then it went into the 3rd of 1965. And Norman how do you say is that Muscarello? He was
So, yeah.
hitchhiking
Keep
back
going.
he was hitchhiking back from Amesbury up into the Exeter area. This actually happened in Kensington. A friend of mine actually lives in Kensington. It's right there. But so he was basically walking for a long, long time. It's about a 12-mile walk from his girlfriend's house to where he was going. And so it was early in the morning, basically. But Jack, there was earlier than that, there was a woman. Do you know that part of it, where there was a woman she had pulled over and said that there was some type of UFO following her?
Yeah. One of the 2 police officers that reported to Norman's sighting prior to Norman going to the police station that day. The only reason why, the way it reads, is one of the police officers believed Norman was because earlier, I think that same day or either the day before, there was some lady traveling from Epping, New Hampshire to Exeter on Route 101, and she was just like pulled over on the side of the road late at night. And for whatever reason, this police officer pulled over just to see if she was okay. And she was going on about this story about how this giant red light was following her in her car, and she was freaking out. And he just kind of chalked it up to like she was a total kook, and left her there and went back on patrol. And then he got called back to Exeter because Norman reported seeing something similar a little bit further down the way, a little further south of town of Exeter. So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing too, Martin, is I think on the 13th and the 17th, you had sent me a clip earlier today from a different YouTube channel, Eyes on Cinema, I think the name is. But he had some great audio of the police law enforcement testimony. But there was another incident that on the 16th and 17th of September, so a couple weeks after the 3rd, where there was a craft seen off of Route 88, I think, a different side of town. So like there were just at least 3 different sightings. It was totally wild. Yeah,
that's right. It was a woman that was involved in that one in her car, and this thing had also red lights, but it had, I believe, white lights as well. So Norman's basically walking 3 o'clock in the morning, basically, and this big, huge red UFO comes up over by. He goes into this field, and it comes right over this farmhouse, and it's the size of the house itself. So he runs up to the door, knocks on the door, not knowing that no one was home.
Wow.
Basically, do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so then he runs out to the road, and a person, he waves his arms in front of a car. That person pulls over. They happen to know Norman, and so they give him a ride to the police station. So then he goes to the police station. Here's a picture of him back then. Goes to the police station, and basically they go out, himself and the police officer, whose name I'm sorry, I can't pull it right off the top of my head. Bertrand. So Bertrand goes to the site with him, basically, and he has this big flashlight, and he's, they're looking around, and then the other police officer happens to stop and gets out on foot, and all of a sudden they hear Norman say, "Here it comes, look out, it's coming." So they all witnesses, so the 2 police officers plus Norman see this red UFO down in the field. It starts to come toward them, and then it zigs and zags, and then slowly drifts off to the east. So you'd think that would be the end of the story, but it's not. So there's Pease Air Force Base. I grew up in the area, so I could actually, I lived on top of a hill in a house, and we could see Pease Air Force Base across the river. We're in Elliott, Maine, but could see Pease. So someone visited Norman from Pease and burst right into the room where he was in and say, "Do not talk about this." And then, Peter, you must have heard all the different ways they tried to pass this off as a hoax and different explanations.
And also, we need to remember this was 60 years ago, and normally the military police sort of code of behavior regarding, a fellow officer and this subject is at best a lot of good-natured ribbing. At worst, how dare you embarrass us by taking this seriously? Serving police officers, like commercial pilots, immediately risk their careers by making a report like this, but they stood by it.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, among all the coverage, a investigative writer named John Fuller not only covered the story for part of the media, but allegorically and actually he wrote the book on it. It's one of the best standalone investigations for folks that want to take the subject more seriously. Nobody has been able to really take this down. Also, he was the one who first chronicled the Hills experiences in Interrupted Journey.
Right.
Anyway, that really helped to make the incident at Exeter the extremely respected, well-known, and well-documented story and account that it is. With these, you can call it everyday heroism. You're not risking your life, but you're risking your career, the way that the community is going to deal with your family. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's, how this conference festival began. But viewers should know it is, in the best sense of the word, a very split event. There is this conference that Martin and I will be speaking at, and other speakers. And Martin, it was funny, I had forgotten you hadn't spoken there because I remember you there so many times over the years.
Yeah.
And it's a first-class presentation, as well as a series of presentations, as well as a wonderful American event. You are in an historic town hall with a wraparound balcony, a building that Abraham Lincoln spoke in an absolutely picture beautiful New England town that served as the capital of the United States during the earliest days of the country. And everybody you can imagine is in that audience. The other thing that's going on is a festival. It's celebrating, I guess you could say, generally, how deeply the subjects of extraterrestrials, UFOs, these areas of speculation and science fiction have penetrated into not just Western culture, everything from, children's cartoons to some of the hugest earning films to advertising, and it's just become part of the culture. This is a way, I guess, folks celebrate it in part. And for anyone that is understandably a bit anxious about we are not alone, it's a way to lighten it up. There is a really fascinating educational tour out to the locations in question. All of the speakers, from the best known to the not best known, we are all accessible to anybody throughout the weekend. And we have an area set up for sales and book signing, hanging out with you guys, taking pictures. There's lots of really good places to eat in the area. And for me, as a New Yorker, it immediately throws me into another area of history. The architecture on Main Street is great. And we're here, but coming and going.
Yeah. Growing up here, I'm in the area. I'm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
It is, it's a historic area and wonderful area. And it's I'm excited to be able to speak so close to home. I mean, my
Yeah,
son's coming. He's bringing some of his friends, and
it's great.
all that type of thing. So yeah, yeah,
There are people that I recognize in the audience that I were first there in 10 years ago when I started, who were already regulars. And questions and answer sessions for me are especially gratifying. These are
yeah,
informed folks. And for years, we had dear Paul Eno and his
right,
son Ben
yep,
doing their radio show as a part of the event on Sunday. Live radio, old-fashioned, their show, CBS affiliate out of Rhode Island. And with Paul gone and Ben not continuing to do that, we do have an up-and-coming blogger who will be doing a live radio show as his presentation.
oh,
Any, yeah,
great,
yeah. So something that you might well do in future.
yeah, definitely, yeah,
But it's, if you've never been to a so-called UFO conference or festival before, this is a good one to start on. If you are a veteran, you don't want to miss this one. And for me, it's become, again, more a family thing, working with these people year after year. And again, knowing everybody gets paid, but we make money for this extraordinarily important cause, the kids in this community. And, it's a win-win situation.
I have to show you a picture. This is actually in my presentation, just because of a blurb about Stanton. But this is a great picture that I took in Exeter at the festival.
That's
And
great.
it's just Stan is approachable. These girls came in with their, and he goes, "Ah, why not?" You know how he always
Totally.
are. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. But yeah,
The most lingering thing at this point, who knows what's going to happen next in the House of Representatives, or who knows the impact of the next whistleblower and testimony. What it comes down to in terms of what we know and being our three-dimensional corporeal selves here in the real world is the people you meet, the friendships that you make, the experiences that you have, the locations that you get to visit, even if it's taking a day or two off from your normal life to go to Exeter, New Hampshire to experience this thing. That's something you can bank on always. And no matter how this whole subject pans out and how much of it we're hanging around to see, time will tell. But it's an event where you can learn a lot and really have a great time.
yeah, yep. So I just wanted to finish up a little more about the incident back in 1965, because I think it's fascinating. The fact that Pease Air Force Base actually had a press conference trying to explain away the situation. And it had to do with a plane that was showing lit advertising, that was in the area, but of course not then. It hadn't flown for several days. And besides, someone made a really good point. Exactly why would you have an advertising plane at 3:00 in the morning in a field over Exeter, New Hampshire?
That's a rough one to respond to.
Yeah.
With a straight face.
And I love, I had talked to Linda Zimmerman before about, her animal reactions. And this was one of the cases where there was an animal reaction. And I talked to someone that actually went there in Exeter and went to that farm and saw the stalls, and they were all still, they never fixed those doors. They were kicked by the horses at night and all, damaged pretty bad. So the dogs were barking, the horses, and the thing made no sound at all, as you always hear. No sound that they could hear, but obviously it affected the animals, and that was probably through sound, possibly.
I had that experience in an unforgettable way once and only once. I remember it well enough to tell you. It was the night of February 18th, 1988 in Suffolk, England, not far from RAF Bentwaters Air Base. And it was a UFO event that was going on when we finally walked away from it after an hour and a half, because we're exhausted from jet lag, having just come in the day before, that, what can you say? Well, for us, we were hearing these very uncomfortable screams coming from this farming area. And I even was able to capture them on my micro cassette recorder at the time. But yeah, and animal reactions are as real a verifiable aspect of this as so many other kinds of evidence.
Yes, right. I remember watching J. Allen Hynek talk about rabbits. I don't know if you ever heard that story about all the rabbits. They just, I think they like froze, or they thought they were asleep, and then when the UFO event happened, they just went back to being normal. So yeah, there's many great things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right about the bus tour. I took that last year for the first time.
Oh, good.
Around to where that happened, and someone has a UFO planted in their yard. I think it's year round, right? It looks like a stationary thing, but yeah. So Peter, you've been doing this 10 years. You've been coming, so that's really amazing that long. Yeah.
This year it's going to work out. It's almost 400 miles each way, and I'm not young and crazy enough to try to do that in a day. So I stop overnight in Albany with a friend who has been a speaker there, a wonderful antiquarian scholar named Laird Scranton. And I'll be staying with him and his wife. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Thursday, where I'll be driving from Ithaca to Albany, is my birthday. And, I'll be on the road for a good part of it, but it is a Chinese dinner on my birthday in Albany, and in lieu of having to put me up at a hotel, the conference committee is delighted to pay for this birthday dinner.
Awesome. That's great. Well, happy upcoming birthday.
In it for the money and the food.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, Peter, if you've looked into other UFO events here in this area, but like Jack was talking about, there was one also a few days later, like less than a couple of weeks, or about a couple of weeks later, that happened on Route 88. Route 88 goes right into Hampton Falls and into Route 1 and all that. But it seems like I remember there was talk, even though I wasn't into UFOs as a kid too much or whatever, I had like a passing interest, but I do remember hearing people talking like there was a lot going on, and that would be, I hate to date myself, but that would be back in the the late 60s, where I was hearing a lot, in early 70s where there was a lot going on in the area. And this is just your opinion. Why do you suppose that, say this thing shows up and then it shows up again a couple of days later? I mean, first of all, there's a lot of questions that brings up, like how far away did that thing come from? Is it another dimension? Is it another solar system? Is it another, what is it? Yeah. But why in the area, and then why show up in the area? Like, for instance, it was in that field when Norman saw it. He goes away for a couple of hours. He comes back. It comes back to that field. And then, like earlier that day, it's in one area. And then it may come back 2 weeks later in that area. I mean, it's always been a puzzle since I've looked at this, why things like that happen.
Boy, I'll tell you, Martin, this is one of the $64,000 questions, as they would have used to say. We can only make educated speculation, and everything you've touched on, given that we're dealing with the unknown here to a good degree, is viable. I had at first, years ago, when I learned about areas that had higher incidences of activity, or certain kinds of activity, or a certain pattern to it, that there was a reason for that they understood. But like, playing with the cat with your hand under a blanket, we don't know what their motivations or desires are. Is it a window area, or is there something going on, perhaps in terms of military technology that they're picking up that they want to check out? Is there's some kind of time or dimensional opening? I know that I know so little after 50 years of study.
Yeah.
I know more than most people, and I can ask better questions. But when we all have colleagues and know people in the field who ultimately champion a certain theory or a certain belief or a set of them and codify them. And once you do that, you essentially create a little belief system that people will approach. You may have quite a bit of fans, or in these days, followers or subscribers, and become a real personality. Who knows? Maybe even making a living the UFO lifestyle, or it's that's part of the way the world is now.
I see a lot of that. Yeah.
Again, going right back to the Exeter UFO conference and festival, like so many events where you have this dynamic, in the best sense of the word, you're in a bell jar. There is an invisible shield that's put over the whole thing for the weekend or the day. And what that denotes is that after you've heard a talk about one of the wildest things you've ever heard, you can turn to the person next to you and start to talk about it as naturally as you would about the weather, on a subject that you wouldn't even discuss with your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or best friend. Yeah. And that there's a free exchange of ideas. You make contact with anybody you want, basically. It's also a living sociology class. I often think of these events like that. Mm-hmm. They're in a Mr. Spock eyebrow-raising way, fascinating. I will also say, as far as the fun part and the popular culture part, we live in a world where almost any thought, product, or idea is kind of weaponized into a line of items for sale. And I have to say, the T-shirts, the hats, the posters, all of that stuff that has come out of Exeter is a cut above. The designs, the way they're manufactured, and the fun of knowing that, yeah, I just bought this hat, but this much of this money, is a sizable amount, is going for this amazing charity. I wonder how much they're going to make this year. Yeah. Also, the sociology of looking at Main Street, where, this wonderful area, circa 1860, 1880, right out of Currier and Ives. You can't, I won't say throw a cat because I love cats, but you can't look anywhere without seeing inflatable green aliens, which I am somewhat ambivalent about, but, cut people slack on a thing like that. It's fun and goofy and makes for great photographs.
And kind of gives kids and, kids kind of think it's fun too. So here's a question here, and we have to wrap up here in just a minute. But so did they try to keep the police quiet? And the answer is yes. Yeah. There was that too. Directly, I can't remember which officer it was, but he was told, let's not talk about this. Let's not let it escalate, that type of thing. So unfortunately, these things, did happen a lot. And when these events happened, this type of thing did happen. I don't know today. Well, we've got less than a minute. I can't really go into it, but I just wonder if today, if this exact same thing happened, how much more open we would be as a society than we were back then. All things to ponder. But thank you, gentlemen, both so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on. So I'll see you both in a couple of days.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Right.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. So next week we will be back again with Mitch Randall. Well, coming up, we have Gene and Natalia Stiko. They're going to be talking about Soviet documents. And then next Tuesday, Mitch Randall next Thursday, we have Katie Paige. Thank you all very much. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky. Good night.